in the electric heart of Seoul's most exclusive underground lounge, neon light slicing through cigarette smoke, bass rattling the walls like a second pulse, Seo-jun sat at the center of his world. Tattoos climbing up the side of his neck, a single streak of silver cutting through his black hair like a scar that had decided to be beautiful. Glass of aged soju in hand, ruling the room without lifting a finger. His lieutenants lounged around him, loud with laughter and expensive liquor, the night already heavy with the kind of confidence that only comes from never being told no. One of them, Kang Minyu, the boldest of the inner circle and occasionally the least careful, leaned in close with a smirk and nodded toward the entrance of the VIP section where a stunning black American model had just walked in. Ruth Okafor, the face of 3 international campaigns this season, face that had stopped traffic in Milan and made editors argue over cover rights. She had a deep burgundy silk set that caught the light like she had chosen it to do exactly that, natural hair pulled back at the crown and falling in thick coils past her shoulders. She moved through the room the way women move when they have never once needed permission from a space. Like the crowd simply rearranged itself and she didn't notice. Look at her, Minyu teased, nudging Seo-jun. That is the kind of woman who could make even you lose your head. Seo-jun glanced over. His eyes were flat, unreadable. He let out a slow, dismissive sound that carried across 3 tables. "Black women don't move me," he said, voice sharp and final the way he said everything. "Not my type, not even close." End of discussion. The table erupted. Glasses clinked, egos fed each other. The moment folded into the general noise of powerful men performing certainty. 2 tables away, Ruth Okafor heard every word. She didn't turn around. She reached for her champagne with a steady hand and took a long, unhurried sip. The particular composure of a woman from Houston who had been underestimated since she was 15 and had long since stopped granting that kind of small-mindedness the dignity of a reaction. But she stored it the way she stored everything that mattered. Every word. Then Minyu leaned close to Seo-jun, voice dropping below the music, grin turning sharp. "You sure, boss? Because I've seen that face stop rooms on 4 continents. Bet you $1,000,000 when you can't spend one evening in the same space as her and walk out unbothered." Seo-jun looked at him for a long beat. The corner of his mouth curved. Deal. She heard the brag. She missed the bet. And that small gap between what she caught and what she didn't, that one missing piece, would cost them both everything they thought they were certain of. If that hook already has you, don't go anywhere. Let's see how fast a man built on arrogance can fall. 3 days later, Ruth Okafor was standing under studio lights on a rooftop terrace in Mapogu. The Han River spread out below her in the autumn haze, wind moving in off the water while the photography crew chased the light and lost it and chased it again. She was 4 hours into a campaign shoot for Hewon Luxury, one of Korea's oldest heritage labels, the kind of campaign that didn't come twice. She was giving them exactly what they needed despite the cold and the wind and the fact that she had been awake since 5. She always gave them exactly what they needed. That was the thing about Ruth the industry had understood early and her competitors had spent years resenting. She wasn't just beautiful. She was precise. She arrived prepared. She delivered and she went home. Directors and brand executives said versions of the same thing in every interview. She makes the whole set feel like it's going to be fine. This campaign mattered more than most. The fee would cover 5 months of her younger sister, Jade's medical costs back in Houston, and make a serious dent in the treatment balance that had been living in Ruth's chest like a second heartbeat for nearly a year. Every frame she delivered on this rooftop was a step closer to the number the specialist needed before she would schedule the procedure. Ruth knew this. She filed it away. She did not let it reach her face because the camera would find it in half a second, and Hewon Luxury was not paying for grief. She felt the shift before she saw it. The specific change in a crew's energy when something has entered the room that doesn't belong there. The assistant director's voice trailing off mid-note. The sound of elevator doors. 3 black SUVs had been cleared to the rooftop level. They shouldn't have been. Men in dark suits stepped out with the calm efficiency of people whose job was simply to exist as a fact. And then the rear door of the center vehicle opened, and Seo-jun stepped onto her chute. In daylight, he was taller than she had registered from 2 tables away. The tailored dark suit fit him the way things fit people who have stopped thinking about what things cost. Open collar. The tattoo curling up his neck. The silver streak in his hair catching the gray Seoul sky differently than it had caught the club's neon. His eyes moved across the rooftop with unhurried precision, reading the space the way she suspected he read every space he walked into. He was looking for the production director, a man named Junsik, who had apparently failed to process a protection payment for the second consecutive month, and was now understanding what that looked like in person. Ruth watched this from her mark, watched Junsik's face cycle through 4 different shades of apology, watched Seo-jun receive all of it without expression, without movement, like the explanations were landing nowhere that mattered. Then one of his men told the set to clear and Ruth stepped forward. She was still in the campaign look. Cream-structured blazer, wide-leg caramel trousers, her coils pinned up on one side, long gold earrings catching the light. She was aware of exactly how she looked. She was also aware that she did not particularly care. "I don't follow instructions from men who announce their opinions about women in nightclubs," she said. Calm, not loud. She had never needed loud. The rooftop went completely still. Seo-jun stopped mid-step. Something moved across his face. There and gone, not quite surprise. More like the recalibration of a man who had walked into a room expecting a particular kind of situation and had encountered something entirely different. He turned toward her slowly. "You have a long memory," he said, "for someone who overheard a private conversation." "It stopped being private when it was loud enough for the back of the room," she said. "And I have a shoot to finish. So unless your business here specifically requires my presence, I'd appreciate you taking your entourage off my set." A ripple went through his men. A quiet tension of people who existed in a world where no one spoke to Seo-jun this way and were now encountering an exception they had no framework for. Seo-jun looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to Junsik. "Payment now or the shoot doesn't finish today." Money changed hands in under 3 minutes. Seo-jun said nothing else. He turned to leave. At the edge of the rooftop, he paused without turning around. "Be at the Murray dinner on Saturday," he said. It was not a question. "Be working," she said. "It's the same event." He walked back to the SUV. The doors closed and the vehicles pulled away. The entire crew exhaled at once. Ruth turned back to the camera. "From the top," she said. That night, Seo-jun sat in his penthouse above Gangnam with the city spread below him like something he had claimed with his hands, which in a certain sense he had, and Ruth Okafor's voice running on a loop he could not locate the off switch for. "I don't follow instructions from men who announce their opinions about women in nightclubs." He told himself it was irritation. The specific annoyance of someone who had disturbed the natural order of a room and needed to be categorized as irrelevant and filed away. He was good at filing things away. He had been doing it since he was 23 and took over his father's organization and learned that the work required a particular kind of emotional precision, the ability to feel something and immediately place it somewhere it could not interfere with whatever needed to happen next. He filed Ruth Okafor under irrelevant. She was back out of the folder before midnight. He pulled up her portfolio. Not because he was interested. Operational intelligence. He had built everything he had on knowing exactly what he was dealing with. 11 years in the industry. Started at 17 in Houston. Campaigns on 5 continents. A reputation built entirely on professionalism and consistency, directors and photographers all saying versions of the same thing in print. He read the profiles twice. He closed the laptop. He opened it again. Min-jun, his second in command, the one person whose judgment Seo-jun trusted without qualification, came in at 2 a.m. with the overnight security briefing and found him at the desk. Min-jun set the folder down, looked at the screen, looked at Seo-jun, said nothing. Seo-jun said. "I haven't said anything." "You're thinking loudly." Min-jun's expression did not change. "I'm thinking about the security report." A pause. "She called you opinionated in front of 15 crew members and 4 of our people. You came home and looked her up." He picked up the folder. "That's all I'm thinking." He left. Seo-jun sat with the closed laptop for a long while. Then he gave an order he had not planned on giving quietly to the overnight detail. Eyes on the He-Won campaign talent, the American. Discreet. Report anything unusual. He told himself it was protocol. The agency paid protection. She was part of that umbrella now. He did not examine this closely. The Murray dinner on Saturday was held in a private room at one of Seoul's most exclusive members' clubs. The kind of room that required introductions just to find the door. Ruth had been to rooms like this on 4 continents. She navigated them with the same composure she brought to every professional space, precisely as warm as the occasion required, and not a single degree warmer. She spotted him the moment she walked in. He was already there, of course. This was his world. Seated at the head of a long table, dark suit, the silver streak catching the candlelight, those near black eyes moving across the room with the same thoroughness she had begun to recognize as simply how he existed in spaces. They found her immediately across the room. She held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds, the same 2 seconds she had given him at the club. The specific duration that said, "I see you, I am not impressed, I have other things to attend to." Then she turned to the He-One creative director moving toward her with an outstretched hand. She was aware of him for the rest of the evening the way you are aware of weather. Not looking directly at it but knowing precisely where it is, he did not approach her. She noticed that too. After dinner, in the narrow corridor outside the private room, waiting for her coat, she heard footsteps behind her. Unhurried, deliberate. She did not turn around. "You didn't look at me once during dinner," he said. "I was working," she said. "You looked at everyone else. They were relevant to my work." A pause. She could feel the space between them had a temperature, not invading, just present the way he was always present, like the room made a small adjustment for him without anyone deciding to allow it. "Long are you in Seoul?" he said. 8 weeks. After, she turned then, looked at him directly. His face in the corridor light was doing something she had not seen it do before. The controls still there, the hardness still there, but something moving underneath it that had not been present on the rooftop. Something that was trying to become something else and hadn't quite arrived yet. "Home," she said. "Houston, and then the next campaign," he said, and then after a beat, "I want to know how long I have." Code arrived. She took it. "For what?" she said. She left before he answered. In the car back to her hotel, she stared out at Seoul in the rain and told herself it meant nothing. He was a man who had announced publicly that she didn't move him. He was a crime boss. He had accepted a bet. Something still nagged at her about that night, something about the way Minyu had leaned in after the brag, the way the table had gone quiet. But she had only caught pieces, and she was not going to build a story out of pieces. She was here for Jade, for the treatment. For 8 weeks of work that needed to be perfect. She opened her phone and pulled up her sister's last voice message. "Hey, Nuna. The doctor says the new medication is helping a little. Don't worry about me, just work. I love you." She listened to it twice. She was not here for this. She kept telling herself that for the next 2 weeks. It became harder to believe. He was at the Sarai Gallery opening she attended for a brand collaboration. Standing near the back wall, not speaking to anyone, watching the room with that quality of attention she had started to think of as simply Seo-jun, he did not approach her. He caught her eye once across the room and nodded once. The minimal acknowledgement of a man who had decided the next move was not his. She stayed longer than the work required. She noticed herself doing it. He was at the fashion showcase the following Wednesday. The venue was his, a legitimate hospitality property in his portfolio. He was standing at the entrance speaking to the general manager and turned when she arrived, and his eyes did the thing they always did. Complete, unhurried, landing on her face and staying there. She was wearing her hair differently tonight. A protective style, sleek and pinned with a few coils framing her face. Gold hoops. A deep forest green dress her stylist Bibai had pulled for the evening. "Different," he said when she was close enough. "It's called range," she said. "You should look into it." "I'm exactly the same everywhere," he said. "I know," she said. "That was my point." And she walked past him into the event, but she was smiling when she did it. Bibai caught the smile immediately. Bibai caught everything. "What was that?" she said, materializing with 2 glasses of champagne. "Nothing," Ruth said. "That man watched you walk past him like he was trying to memorize it. That is not nothing." Bibai handed over the champagne. "He also has remarkable bone structure and very interesting hair." Bibai. "I'm just describing what I observed," Bibai said, entirely unbothered. "Drink your champagne." It was Min-jun who said it first, 3 weeks after the Rooftop shoot. In the middle of a strategy meeting about a district expansion, Min-jun placed a folder on the table and waited for Seo-jun to finish reading before he spoke. "Attended 4 events in the past 3 weeks that have no business relevance," Min-jun said. "The Sarai Gallery opening is fashion. We have no clients in fashion." "You stayed for 90 minutes, 40 of which you spent near the back wall watching the room." Silence. "Your men have noticed," Min-jun said quietly, not as a warning. As information, Seo-jun looked at the table. Min-jun was right. He was always right. It was the most useful and most inconvenient thing about him. "What do you want me to do about it?" Seo-jun said. Min-jun looked at him. "Nothing," Seo-jun said finally. I want to do nothing about it. Min-jun nodded once, picked up his folder. Then I'll quietly tighten the perimeter around her events, he said. He left. Seo-jun sat alone in the meeting room for a while after. He thought about the bet, about the $1,000,000, about Min-yu's grin and the easy confidence of a man certain enough about something to make a wager on it. He thought about what the bet had started as and what it had become, and whether the distance between those two things was a distance that would matter to her. He thought it probably would. He had not worked out what to do with that yet. The call came on a Tuesday morning. From Min-yu directly, which was unusual because Min-yu communicated face-to-face or not at all. The fact that he was calling meant something had happened that required speed. Boss, Min-yu said. Shin Di-won's people were at the Hee-won shoot location this morning. Watching. Seo-jun went very still. Shin Di-won, 51, former ally. Specific category of enemy that was more dangerous than a stranger because he knew the operation from the inside. 2 years ago, Seo-jun had refused a territory arrangement that would have made Di-won rich at the cost of Seo-jun's autonomy. Di-won had never stopped looking for the thing powerful men always eventually produced, a vulnerability. Many, Seo-jun said, 3, gone before our detail arrived, but they were there long enough. Long enough for what? Long enough to photograph her specifically. Jun set the phone down on the desk very carefully, looked at the city below the window for a moment, then picked it back up. Double the detail, he said. Get Min-jun. He stood at the window after. Di-won had photographed her specifically, which meant Di-won had been watching long enough to see the pattern, the events, the proximity, the places Seo-jun had been showing up in with no reason to be there. Min-jun had warned him. He had done nothing and meant it as a decision about Ruth, not as a security decision. It had been both. He needed to tell her something. Because leaving her in the dark while Di-won's people circled was the one thing he was not willing to do. He reached for his phone, then stopped. He did not have her number. He had had eyes on her for 3 weeks and had never once asked for it because asking would have required acknowledging something he had spent 3 weeks refusing to say out loud. He called Min-jun. I need her number, he said, a pause. Of course you do, Min-jun said with the specific neutrality of a man who had been expecting this call. I'll send it. He did not say another word. He did not need to. She was between fittings when her phone rang. Unknown number, Seoul area code. She almost didn't answer. She answered anyway. It's Seo-jun. She was quiet for a moment. Across the fitting room, Bibai looked up from the rack she was sorting. How did you get this number? Carefully, he said. That's not a satisfying answer. He agreed. It isn't. A pause. I need to speak with you in person tonight if possible. There is someone connected to a situation involving me who has been photographing you. I would rather tell you directly than have you find out another way. Fitting room was very quiet. Where? She said. He came to the hotel alone. No Min-jun, no men, just him in the dark coat with his hands in his pockets and the silver streak catching the lobby lighting as he crossed to where she was waiting by the window overlooking the garden courtyard. She had chosen the lobby deliberately. Public space, neutral ground. Witnesses, he sat across from her, ordered nothing, looked at her directly. There is a man named Shin Di-won, he said. Former associate, now an enemy. He has been trying to build leverage against me for 2 years. His people were at your shoot yesterday. They photographed you specifically. Because I have been visible in your orbit for 3 weeks and Di-won is a man who does not miss patterns. What does that mean for me? She said. It means you are no longer invisible to people I would not want to know you exist. He held her gaze. I'm increasing your security detail. You won't see them, but they will be there. You already had people watching me, she said. Yes. How long? 3 weeks. She looked at him for a long moment, the full weight of her attention on his face, looking for the thing behind the thing. Why? She said. Before Di-won, before any of this. Why? He was quiet for a moment. Because I wanted to know you were safe, he said. And because I did not know how to say that to you without, he stopped. Without looked at his hands briefly, then back at her. Without admitting something I had been telling myself wasn't true for 3 weeks, he said. The lobby moved gently around them. Soft music, low conversation, the ambient comfort of a well-appointed space. None of it touched what was happening at the table by the window. You said I didn't move you, she said. In a room full of people, loud enough for me to hear. I know what I said. And I was wrong, he said. From the first word I was wrong. I knew it before I finished the sentence. I said it anyway because... His jaw tightened. The specific frustration of a man who had built his entire life on controlled expression arriving at a moment where the control wasn't enough. Because it was easier if it was true. It was easier than this. Easier than what? she said. He looked at her. This, he said simply, just that. Ruth sat with it. This man, dangerous and controlled and carrying something she was only beginning to understand the full weight of, looking at her across a hotel table with the expression of someone who had exhausted every strategic option and arrived somewhere unplanned. I need to think, she said. This is a lot. You are a lot. This world, D1, the detail I didn't ask for. I know, he said. I'm not asking for anything. I'm telling you what's true and telling you about the threat because you deserve to know. What you do with either of those things is yours. She looked at him. I'll think about it, she said. He nodded once, stood, put on his coat. At the lobby door he stopped, same as he had done on the rooftop. The specific punctuation of a man who delivered his last thing and left before the response could complicate it. Campaign, he said. The sister, I hope it goes well. She went still. How do you know about my sister? I told you, he said. I know what I'm dealing with. He left. Ruth sat at the lobby table for a long while after, looking at the courtyard garden through the glass, thinking about a man who had done enough research to find out about Jade and had used that knowledge not to leverage her but to hope out loud that it would work out. She was in trouble, real trouble, she called Bib. Tell me I'm being foolish, she said. Are you being foolish about the crime boss with the silver streak? How did you? Ruth, I have eyes, tell me you're being foolish. A long pause. I genuinely cannot. I've tried. I really have. The next 12 days were quiet and excruciating in the way that happens when two people have admitted something without resolving it and are now living inside the atmosphere of the unfinished. He texted 3 times in 12 days. 3 texts from Seo-jun felt like a flood given that she suspected he communicated with most people primarily through silence and implication. The texts were not romantic. They were direct. Shoot location on Wednesday has a blind spot at the north stairwell. Detail repositioned. The Murray dinner next week has a table placement I've requested changed. You were too far from the main exit. D1's people have not moved in 5 days, likely reassessing. She responded to all 3. He came to one more event. The He-won campaign preview at the brand's flagship in Cheongdam-dong. She was working, moving through the space with Bibai and the creative director, and she turned at a certain point and he was simply there. Near the back, dark suit, silver streak. Those near black eyes finding her immediately across the room. This time she crossed to him. You keep appearing, she said. You keep being somewhere, he said. That's not an explanation. He agreed. It's just true. She looked at him completely, without the protective layer of professional composure between them for the first time. I'm still thinking, she said. I know, he said. Take the time you need. What if I need 8 weeks? Then I'll still be here. What if I need more than 8 weeks? He looked at her steadily. Then I'll find a reason to be wherever you are. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, there's a Jajangmyeon place in Ixiandong I've been wanting to try. Bibai says it's the best in the city. I'm going on Friday evening if the shoot finishes on time. She turned back to the creative director. Behind her nothing, no confirmation, no response, just the event continuing around her. Friday evening she walked into the place in Ixiandong at 7 and Seo-jun was already there. Corner seat back to the wall, 2 menus on the table. You didn't confirm, she said, sitting down. You didn't ask me to, he said. How did you know I'd come? I didn't, he said. But I came anyway. She picked up the menu. Order something, she said. I'm starving. They ate for 2 hours. Not about the campaign, not about D1, not about anything that belonged to the world outside the restaurant. They talked about Houston and Seoul and what it felt like to build a life somewhere that wasn't originally yours and make it yours anyway. About Jade. Not the treatment, just Jade, who was 22 and studying physical therapy, and had their grandmothers laugh, and called Ruth every Sunday morning at 10 without fail. About his own grandmother, Halmoni, 81, who had built the legitimate side of the Seo family business from nothing and who called him by his childhood nickname in public and was the only person alive who got away with it. What does she call you? Ruth said. Jana, he said. She's called me that since I was 3. She says Seo-jun is too much name for someone who used to cry whenever a cicada landed on him. Ruth stared at him. You cried because of a cicada. I was 3, he said, with the specific dignity of a man defending something that could not actually be defended. She laughed. The real one. Full face, full sound, the kind that took over completely. The other diners glanced over. She didn't notice. He watched it happen, and his face did the thing she had been cataloging for weeks. The hardness still there, but something surfacing underneath it. Quiet, enormous, and entirely involuntary, she said when she caught him. Nothing, he said. Doing the thing. What thing? The thing where you look at me like you're trying to work something out. He was quiet for a moment. I have worked it out, he said. I just don't know what to do with the answer yet. She held his gaze. Start with honesty, she said. That's usually the right place. He nodded slowly, like a man making a real decision. I want to take you somewhere on Sunday, he said. Not an event, not work. Somewhere I want to show you. Stone path along the outer walls of Changdeokgung, he said. Early morning, it's quiet, there are cats, she blinked. The old palace walls. There's a path along the outside that most people don't know, he said, with the complete seriousness of a man who knew how it sounded and had decided to say it anyway. My halmoni used to take me when I was small. I haven't been in years. There are always cats in the morning. She looked at him. This man who ran an empire and had tattoos up his neck and had announced in a club that she didn't move him, offering to take her to walk along old palace walls because they were quiet and there were cats. Sunday, she said. 7 a.m., send a car. Meet you there, she said. I know how to find a palace. He almost smiled. She found out about the bet on a Friday night, not from him. From Minyu, who had had too much to drink at a Seo group function Ruth had attended as a brand guest, and who had apparently not received or not retained Seo Jun's instruction about keeping his mouth shut. He said it in the particular way drunk people say things they think are compliments. You know, he made a bet the first night he saw you. 1,000,001 that you wouldn't affect him. Minyu grinned. Best bet he ever lost. Ruth set her glass down. What bet? She said. Minyu's face went through the journey of a man realizing he had made a catastrophic error. It was nothing, he said quickly. Just a thing at the club between us. At the club, she said. The same night he said I didn't move him. She looked at him. Right after he said it. Function moved around them. Music, conversation, the elegant ambient noise of an industry event in full swing. None of it registered. She found Bibai, said 2 words. We're leaving. In the car, she stared at her phone. His name in her contacts, added 11 days ago. The specific small intimacy of that. She did not call. She did not text. She thought about the rooftop and the gallery and the restaurant and the way he had looked at her when she laughed. She thought about I want to know how long I have, and I'll find a reason to be wherever you are. She thought about 1,000,001 bet placed the same night he announced she didn't move him. She thought about all the ways those 2 things could fit together or refuse to. She was not going to cry in a car in Seoul over a man who had made her a proposition she hadn't even known she was part of. She stared out the window and held very still for the rest of the ride. At the hotel, she typed 1 message before she could revise it. Don't send a car Sunday. Don't contact me. She put the phone face down. It buzzed almost immediately. She did not look at it. She did not look at it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, she picked it up. 15 messages from him. 2 from Minjun, which was unusual enough that she read those first. Minjun's messages were not about the bet. Miss Okafor, my name is Minjun. I work with Seo Jun. I'm reaching out because there has been a development with Shin D1 that requires your immediate attention. Please call this number. The second message 4 hours later, Miss Okafor. This is urgent. Please call, she called. Minjun answered on the first ring. Miss Okafor, thank you. Where are you right now? My hotel room. Not open your door, he said. The detail outside has been compromised. 2 men down. We believe D1's people are in the building. Seo Jun has been trying to reach you for 2 days. He's on his way. Lock the secondary bolt. The door came off its hinges. She fought. That was the first thing Seo Jun's men told him when he arrived at the hotel 22 minutes later. That she had fought, hard and immediately, and it had taken 3 of D1's men to get her out, and one of them was going to need a hospital. He stood in the wreckage of her room. Overturned furniture. A broken desk lamp she had clearly used as a weapon. Her phone face down on the floor, screen cracked. He looked at it and felt something he had not felt since the day he stood over his father and understood for the first time what it meant to have something to lose. Minjun placed a hand briefly on his shoulder, said nothing, which was exactly right. D1's demand arrived within the hour. 3 lines, no preamble, the CO territories, all of them. Transfer documents signed by midnight or the model doesn't see morning. Seo Jun read it once. Minjun, already working. Work faster. They found her in 3 hours. A commercial building in Yongdyungpo, 3 floors, river access. D1 had moved her twice, but the second vehicle had been tracked through traffic cameras, and a network of contacts Minjun had been building for over a decade. Seo Jun went with 8 men. Did not wait for a complete assessment. Did not negotiate. The building went loud and then went quiet in the particular way buildings go quiet when the people making noise have been removed. Seo Jun moved floor by floor with the focus of a man closing the distance on the only thing that mattered, the rooftop. D1 stood near the edge with two men and Ruth, who was bound at the wrists and had a cut above her right eyebrow, her coils slightly disheveled. Standing with her chin exactly level and her eyes burning with the specific fury of a woman who had been fighting since the hotel room and had not stopped for a single second, she saw Seo Jun come through the rooftop door. Something moved through her expression. There and gone, controlled immediately. But he had seen it and stored it somewhere it would not leave. Seo Jun, D1 said. The documents. Her go, Seo Jun said. Documents first. Her go, he said again, stepping forward. Then we talk. There's nothing to talk about. You sign or... I'm not signing anything, Seo Jun said. I'm telling you that if you put one more hand on her, I will take apart everything you've built in this city with my own hands and I will take my time doing it. Another step. And I'm telling you she is leaving this rooftop with me right now, and what happens to you after that depends entirely on whether you make it difficult. D1 looked at him, at the 8 men positioned behind, at Min Jun who had materialized to his left at some point without anyone seeing it happen. The calculation took 3 seconds. He nodded to his men. They cut the zip ties. Ruth walked across the rooftop to see Junhee put his coat around her shoulders without being asked, the automatic gesture of a man for whom her comfort had become instinctive, and kept his hand at her back as Min-jun managed the situation behind them. At the rooftop door, she stopped. Bet, she said. I know, he said. I need you to explain it. Will, he said. Everything. But first I need to get you somewhere safe and someone needs to look at that cut. She looked at him. The full assessment. Everything on the table. Okay, she said. But then you explain. He explained in the back of the car with Min-jun driving and a medic working on the cut above her eyebrow with careful hands and Seoul moving past the windows in the dark. The bet started as arrogance, he said. You said it and I accepted it because I had been making that statement about black women for years and I believed it had calcified into something true and I wanted to prove it was still true. He looked at his hands. I looked at you when you walked into that club and I knew within 30 seconds that I had already lost. I knew it before I finished the sentence. I said it anyway. She was quiet. The medic worked. The city moved. Why did you keep coming to the events? She said. Never collected the money, he said. I told Minyu to keep it, and I kept coming because the bet stopped being the reason approximately 5 minutes after it started and became something I didn't have a word for yet. He looked at her directly. I should have told you. I was going to tell you Sunday, at the palace walls. I had decided that being honest with you mattered more than protecting myself from what it would cost. What did you think it would cost? She said. Walking away, he said simply. Which you did anyway, which I understand. She was quiet for a while. Outside the window, Seoul moved through the night in its particular way, the way a city that enormous moves without stopping for anyone or anything. My sister's name is Jade, she said finally. She's 22. The treatment is in 7 weeks if I can get the balance covered. The Hee-won fee covers most of it. He looked at her. It's covered, he said. Seo Jun, it's covered, he said again. Not as a transaction, not as something owed, because she is your sister and you have been carrying this alone for almost a year. You don't have to anymore. She looked at him for a long time. You're a lot, she said. I know, he said. The silver streak, she said. Does it go all the way back? He blinked. The blink of a man who had prepared for several possible responses and had not prepared for this one. Yes, he said. My grandfather had it. It's beautiful, she said simply. He looked at her. She looked back out the window. It had started to rain. The particular Seoul rain that arrives without announcement and settles in with every intention of staying. I was already going to meet you Sunday, she said. Before Minyu, I had already decided. He went very still. And now, he said. She looked at the rain on the glass, at the city, at her hands, at the coat he had put around her on the rooftop without a second thought. Now I still want to go, she said. Cats and all. Something happened to his face then, not the ghost of a smile, not the learned performance of one. The real thing, quiet and total and entirely his own. The smile of a man who had been the Iron Dragon for so long he had half forgotten there was a person underneath it, finding out that there was. He reached across the seat. She met him halfway. Their hands found each other in the back of a car in the Seoul rain and held on. 3 months later, Jade Okafor's procedure was scheduled for a Thursday in Houston. It went well. Ruth flew home the week before and sat in the waiting room for 5 hours and held her sister's hand in recovery when Jade said, You didn't have to come all the way back. And Ruth said, I know, in the tone that meant don't be ridiculous. Seo Jun flew in on Saturday. He brought his halmoni, 81, who had insisted on coming and whom no one had ever successfully refused. She walked into Jade's hospital room, looked at Ruth, looked at Seo Jun, and said something in Korean that made Seo Jun close his eyes briefly. What did she say? Ruth asked. She says she knew from the photograph, he said. What photograph? The one Min Jun sent her. He said it with the expression of a man who had long ago made peace with this. 3 months ago. From the Jae Jajangmyeon place in Ixiandong, they have an arrangement. Jade, from the hospital bed, looked at Seo Jun with the specific assessment of a younger sister who had been hearing about this man for 3 months and was now delivering her verdict. You have a very interesting streak of silver, she said. It's a birthmark, he said. I know, she said. Ruth told me. A pause. She said it was beautiful. Jun looked at Ruth. Ruth looked at the ceiling. Jade, she said. I'm recovering, Jade said serenely. I can say what I want. Halmoni said something short and definitive. What now? Ruth said. He was quiet for a moment. She says you'll do, he said. That's all. You'll do, that's the highest endorsement. From my Halmoni, he said quietly. Yes, it is. Ruth looked at her, 81 years old, sharp-eyed, the woman who had built something real from nothing and spent decades making sure it lasted. Halmoni looked back, then she nodded once. The precise, minimal acknowledgement of someone who has made up her mind and considers the matter settled. Ruth looked at Seo Jun. He was watching her with the expression she had been collecting since the restaurant. Quiet, enormous, entirely involuntary. Stop looking at me like that, she said. I'm not looking at anything, he said, with the specific dignity of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. She took his hand. Outside the Houston hospital window, the autumn light was doing what Houston autumn light does, golden and warm and completely certain of itself. The way the city had always been. The way she had always been. The way she was going to keep being. The Iron Dragon had bragged that black women didn't move him. He had been wrong from the very first word. And he had stopped being the Iron Dragon, not all at once, not completely, but in the way that actually matters. The moment a woman from Houston looked at him across a club like he was ordinary. She had moved mountains, and he had fallen willingly. If you were Ruth, what would you have do? And how would you react? Would you have done something different from what Ruth did? Like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. See you in the next one.